In this video, we're talking about the massive graphics boost we're about to get in 2026. Then I want to talk about why PlayStation shouldn't take Xbox's handheld bait. And finally, we got some new details on Intergalactic the Heretic Prophet. I'm pretty sure I've been calling it Intergalactic the Heretic Prophecy forever. So I got it figured out now after watching Creator with Neil Druckmann and Alex Garland. So we got that figured out, but we're going to talk about the new details. So yeah, in the last video, we talked about the new update to Project Amethyst. This came directly from AMD. They said the partnership's going great. They want to make sure they can get some of their better PC tech components and features backported to console going into the future. And that was really talking about the PlayStation 6. But it turns out a lot of the big advancements that AMD has made recently are coming to the PS5 Pro in 2026. So graphics are about to get even better than they already are, which is a net positive all around. So the wording on this is a little tricky. It turns out that Project Amethyst was like Sony developing PSSR and AMD developing the next version of FSR, FSR4, and then they would take the best features of both and combine them to pick one to continue going forward with in the future. And it turns out they've decided to go with FSR4 going forward. So what Sony and AMD are going to do for the PlayStation 5 Pro is backport FSR to the PS5 Pro. And the cool thing about that is the other tech out there, like the PS5 original, unfortunately, but mainly the Xbox Series X and S, they do not have the graphics architecture to take advantage of these features. And that's why the PS5 is not getting FSR4. It just can't run on the PS5. It doesn't have those latest and greatest RDNA features that the PS5 Pro has. So the PS5 Pro is getting features that the brand new graphics card from AMD that literally just came out is getting with FSR4, and it's going to look even better than PSSR. So I talked about this a lot in the last video, but up until recently, FSR has been bad. So that's why Sony developed PSSR in the first place. They were like, look, the FSR upscaling is not going good enough on the regular PlayStation 5. If we're putting in all this effort to make a PlayStation 5 Pro console, we want to make sure that the upscaling tech is great. So we'll work with you to make it great, and then you can use this tech in the future. And then AMD took that tech and made FSR better than what Sony made. So Sony is literally going to FSR4 with the PS5 Pro. I'm assuming that PSSR will be around still if games are already in development using it, but as we've seen, it's not really all that difficult to include different upscalers. Like I was just looking at Death Stranding Director's Cut. That has pretty much every upscaler under the sun, whether it's FSR, XeSS, which is Intel's upscaler, or DLSS if you have an NVIDIA graphics card. You know, it has pretty much everything across the board. I mean, if you look at any game on PC, they have everything. Unless there's some exclusive deal between AMD and that game that makes it have FSR only, or vice versa with NVIDIA where it makes it only have DLSS. Traditionally, if the game uses Unreal 2, you'll get TSR on top of every other upscaler. So it's not too crazy to consider that PSSR will stick around going into the future, but then they'll upgrade to FSR4 when it becomes available. And that's really cool because PS5 games on PC, like Horizon Forbidden West, like Death Stranding Director's Cut, like the upcoming Days Gone remaster, they'll be able to show us theoretically how these games will run on the PS5 Pro in 2026 when this new FSR comes to the console, because it's coming out a lot sooner on PC, but the preliminary results from Digital Foundry have been really good. So it's not really like a bad solution turning into a good one. It's like a great solution that's already implemented that will stick around in the meantime, getting a massive upgrade in 2026 that will make things even better. It's just like a complete win-win across the board. I really like Mark Cerny's approach with the PlayStation 5 Pro, where he's using it as his little test bed prototype machine for the PlayStation 6. It is crazy to see how far this console has been pushed in terms of raw performance when it comes to comparing it to PC. Like, you are getting an incredible deal with the PS5 Pro. I know it's only going to be around for a few more years, but what we get from it will be really good with the PlayStation 6. Theoretically, it'll obviously be even more powerful, but the cool thing is, because so much work is going into keeping this console up to date with the latest and greatest tech on the PC side of the fence, I could see the PS5 Pro remaining relevant a lot longer than the PS4 Pro did. Like, when that thing came out, it sold okay. Like, it did probably as well as Sony wanted it to, because they ended up making a PS5 Pro, but when the PS5 came out, all of the focus went to the regular PS4. They never advertised the PS4 Pro. I'm pretty sure they took it off the market very quickly. I mean, even leading up to the PS5 when you could just buy a PS4 Pro, they were really hard to get. Like, you had to get them from PlayStation Direct, you had to wait for them to restock on Best Buy. Like, Sony did not stock them nearly as much as they did the regular PS4, and they continued that on going into the PS5 generation. I don't think that's going to be the case this time around. Like, they are treating the PS5 Pro as a marquee console that's just straight up there to push things forward and test out features for the PlayStation 6, and I think that's really cool. Thankfully, we finally have some PlayStation Studios games coming to take advantage of not only this new hardware, but also the old hardware as well. We've got Ghost of Yotei, we've got Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet. It's going to be so hard to remember. We've got Death Stranding 2, and plenty more we haven't even heard about. So while it seems like we're still in the dire straits section of the PlayStation lifecycle, I think things are finally turning around. I mean, at least on the hardware side of the fence, things are looking incredible. If you took the bait and bought a PC for the price of a PS5 Pro, I feel bad for you, man, because you are getting way more bang for your buck out of the PS5 Pro, even with its insane $700 price tag. Like, when I read stuff like this, it makes me feel better about the purchase. And I was looking at replaying Death Stranding Director's Cut before the second game came out because, you know, it's a little old at this point, and I have it on PC, but I really would just want to play it on PS5 Pro because it looks and runs amazing. It runs at a native 4K in the prioritized graphics mode, and it should run at a lock 60 on PS5 Pro. I can't even do that with my PC. So yeah, I feel pretty good about the PS5 Pro purchase at this point. It's cool to see FSR 4 coming exclusively to one console, not even all the consoles in the PlayStation brand, just one specific console that Sony's working hard on. Sticking with speculating on the future, we've got to talk handhelds. I love talking about handhelds. I don't know what your guys' read on it is. I am a huge handheld gamer. My main consoles are the PlayStation 5 and the Steam Deck. Like, I love the Steam Deck. I hope in the future we get some sort of cross save between the PlayStation console and PC so I can take my PlayStation saves on the go. But until then, certain games are for the deck, certain games are for the PlayStation 5. It's honestly not that bad. I love both consoles pretty much equally, but I've been on record saying I'm really excited about the idea of a new PlayStation handheld as one of the few Vita evangelists. Like, that thing's biggest problem outside of having proprietary memory cards is that it was just ahead of its time. If that thing came out a few years later and really prioritized having new native games on it that are the same as the console, like we saw with the Nintendo Switch, it would have been a huge gangbuster hit. But it was just like the last breath of traditional handheld consoles like the DS and the PSP, where they had their own native games and weren't trying to push true console gaming, and then they pivoted and it just wasn't powerful enough. But they've always had the chops to make great hardware, so I am excited about a handheld, and I just don't want them to rush it because, you know, they kind of might based on this new Xbox news. So this is coming from Jez Corden, who I'd call a buddy. I met him a few times. He was incredibly nice. I really like his stuff over at Windows Central. He's basically laid out Xbox's roadmap, and they're not starting with their own handheld. It's like the most Xbox thing to do. What they're doing is making a handheld with like Asus or Lenovo that's going to have Xbox branded buttons. So they're really just copying Valve because Valve teamed up with Lenovo to make the Lenovo Legion Go S that runs SteamOS. So it's going to have a Steam button. They're just doing the same thing, and they're going to make a Lenovo Legion Go S or an ROG Ally that has an Xbox dedicated button, and it'll have some stuff worked in to make Windows kind of feel more like a gaming operating system. And then eventually, like in 2027, they're going to have a next gen Xbox that's a lot more PC like, and they're going to have their own Xbox handheld that's made by Microsoft. And the thing I want Sony to pay attention to here is that they're just throwing shit at the wall clearly and seeing what sticks. Like, I'd imagine if this handheld comes out and it uses a Z2 chip, it's going to have bad performance because Z2 chip handhelds are already out there and they perform terribly. And then they'll say, oh, we got to have better performance on our own handheld, or they might not even make it. They don't even really know what they're doing. It's very obvious because we don't know and they don't know if Xbox hardware is going to be around. And as we've seen, you can't trust anything they say because they speak out of both sides of their mouths relentlessly, and it's super irritating. So I know I talk about this a lot, but Sony, it seems like with Xbox, they look at what Xbox does and then they just copy it regardless, you know, whether it's because the investors come at them or what, I don't know. But when they do stuff like charge for online services. A few years later, we got to pay for PS Plus. When they do stuff like make Game Pass, a few years later, they increase the price of PS Plus Essential, add on extra and premium with the big game libraries, and then we got to pay more money for that. There's countless other examples of Sony following in Xbox's footsteps and not really investigating whether or not it works out for Xbox before doing so. And I mean, they've gotten consequences from it multiple times, like with Horizon Forbidden West, when they added it to the extra library like a year after it came out, and they were like, whoa, people stopped buying this game when they could get it for a free monthly subscription. That's crazy. And when they took it off the service, it didn't really recover the sales, even with the new expansion Burning Shores. So they've definitely been bitten in the butt for copying Xbox, and this is a situation where they should trust themselves. They've always had great handheld hardware. They always have just been a little either too early or too late to the party, but now that everyone else is doing their own handheld testing, like Valve's got the Steam Deck, Nintendo's got the Switch 2 coming out, Xbox is working with a manufacturer and then making their own, I think they can kind of wait, right? Like we know they have 2 chips in development for the PS6, one for the hardcore console, like the one that goes under your TV, one for a handheld. Let this stuff just play out. Like, let's see what Valve does with the Steam Deck 2. Let's see how the Switch 2 actually holds up to the PS5 and Series X. Let's see how Xbox's bizarre handheld strategy plays out, and then just make the best combination of all of those different things, and you just win. Because if you make a handheld that can run PS5 games natively that you can take on the go and then stream PS6 games like you can with the PS Portal, we know people are going to want it, because despite the PS Portal being the device that it is, aka a device that doesn't actually play games, it like streams them from your console, it is consistently the best-selling accessory for the PlayStation 5, and it's selling astronomically better than Sony expected. So when they disrupt in their own ways, their stuff tends to do pretty well outside of something like the PSVR 2, of course. And when they follow in Microsoft's footsteps, instead of learning from what they did wrong, things tend to work out a lot better for them. So that's what I really hope they do with this upcoming handheld. I hope it happens. But like I mentioned in the intro, Neil Druckmann just sat down with Alex Garland, which was crazy for me because I like Neil Druckmann. I love Alex Garland. He's the guy behind stuff like 28 Days Later. He's got that new movie Warfare coming out that looks awesome. He's like one of my favorite writers in the industry. So seeing these two together was like 2 halves of my brain converging on each other, and it was awesome. So Neil Druckmann actually gave a lot of details about Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, and it makes me a little less excited for the game, if I'm being honest. But I'll tell you about it and you can make your own decision, obviously, which you should always do. So the story setup is it takes place 2,000 years after the 80s, where like the timelines diverge. So like there's the 80s that were awesome here in America and I guess around the world, I don't really know, and then there was like a timeline divergence and they got kind of stuck in the 80s. Then on this planet that you're going to explore, a new religion kind of formed and then went through its whole paces. Like it had its eras of religion, blah blah blah, and then the planet fell apart. Everyone who goes to the planet gets stuck there, they can't escape. That's what happens to you. You got to piece together what the hell happened to the people on this planet, what the hell happened to this religion, and hopefully find a way off the planet. He said it's inspired a little bit by the storytelling in Half-Life 2. He wants it to feel lonely, like this character is just going to be alone on this planet. That all sounds cool. It's just the religion aspect, because he talked about The Last of Us Part 2, where he got a lot of hate for the story. So they said, okay, let's be a little bit different and go for religion, obviously sarcastically. Like this game is kind of looking like it's at odds with itself. Like the whole reason they're making it is so that they don't have to make a dour, sad, depressing style game like The Last of Us, and then the themes they're exploring are religion and loneliness. Like I want some of that Jack and Daxter energy back, that Uncharted energy back, where, you know, crazy stuff happens in those games, but at the end of the day, there's like an underlying tone of fun and niceness. Like, I don't know if I'm getting soft or what, but like after the past 5 years, starting with the lockdowns in 2020, I am just like, I need stuff that makes me happy these days. Like, I don't need to be exploring the darkest recesses of my emotions in my mind. Like, I don't need to investigate stuff that makes me upset, like, you know, warring religions and loneliness. Like, I like games like Astrobot now that make me happy when I play them, or Red Dead Redemption 2, where I'm just exploring the landscape of America before everything was a giant city. The shift in Naughty Dog's philosophies since Bruce Straley left is making me me realize that it's not the Naughty Dog I grew up with. And there's nothing wrong with that because they're retaining all the things that I like about Naughty Dog, which is excellent graphics, pushing the hardware, cool gameplay, really character-driven stuff. Everything is there. It's just the approach of the actual games is so different from what I grew up with and fell in love with Naughty Dog from, like Uncharted. Like The Last of Us could not be more different than Uncharted, and Intergalactic looked like it was kind of going back towards Uncharted, and then hearing that it's about religion and loneliness, I'm like, I gotta prepare myself for another bummer game. So hopefully it tones that back just a little bit from The Last of Us, but still seems cool. Just thought I should update you guys on the new details because I don't know if it's going to be like a Death Stranding 2 situation where Hideo Kojima like 6 months ago was like, oh man, this game's far as fuck away. Like, don't expect this anytime soon, guys, because we just started working on it. And then now it's like coming out in June. So like he was just like bearing the lead. I don't know. He was like trying to convince us it wasn't coming out soon. Like they seem to have a lot of stuff nailed down with Intergalactic. I hope it comes out sooner rather than later and isn't the Ghost of Tsushima of the PlayStation 5 generation where it comes out when the PS6 is already announced. Like we don't need that because then we'll get the $10 remaster on PS6 and everyone will argue about it. Like let's get it out before the PS6 is announced. Like that's my only sort of wish here. But yeah, guys, that's all I've got for you in today's video. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.